This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Hey, this is Christian Roldan.
And Jordan Morris from the Seattle Sounders Football Club.
And you're listening to
This is Nos Arietes.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
A sideline fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Ladero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is good.
Seattle Sounders, the greatest MLS team in history.
They've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Is that what you young people call twerking?
And Paul can't say it's cheating.
We want to win. Let's Seattle Thunder, bro.
Go Seattle!
Welcome to another edition of Nos Arietes, sponsored by Full Pull Wines, Watson's Counter, and our new subscribers. This is episode 422 and recording on Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. I'm your host, Jeremiah Shan. Joining me as usual is my co-host, Aaron Campo, and of course, our producer, Lickett. So the eagle-eared of you, I don't know if that's really a term, will have noticed I didn't say our Substack subscribers, and that's because we come to you with some very big news. This week, this is a bye week, obviously, for the Sounders. It wasn't really expected. Went out of Leagues Cup. Maybe it was expected. I don't know. But the reason we're recording is two things. We're going to talk about the roster, but we also have some very big news about the future of Nos Arietes and Sounder at Heart and Ride of the Valkyries. In case you didn't notice, we have, or you haven't heard, we're combining forces. We're going to be living under the banner of something we're calling PNW Soccer Media. And we're all going to essentially be working together on Sounder at Heart as one organization. It's going to be reader supported. And the key element of that is we took all of our Substack subscribers, many of which are listening right now, I imagine, and we moved them onto a new platform called Ghost. And that's also where Sounder at Heart's going to live. We're going to have more details on all of that move later in the show. We'll do a whole segment on it. But the big thing to keep in mind is that if you want to read about it, there's an article on Sounder at Heart. There's an article on our Substack. Should give you everything you need to know. That said, with no games to discuss, I thought this would be a good opportunity to look forward. I actually wrote a column on Sounder at Heart this week, or today, actually on Wednesday, where I basically outlined what I think is going to happen in the offseason. The TLDR of that column is that the Sounders have have more than half of their salary cap space that is potentially opening up this offseason. That means there's a potential for a ton of change. Aaron, what moves do you think you most want to see this offseason?
I think that this offseason, the critical thing is to sign somebody who's going to replace some of the production you would expect from the designated player spots. I think you kind of talked about this in your article. It's probably unreasonable to suspect that they are going to fill every DP spot, that they're going to be guns blazing. We've talked, years past that the Sounders have traditionally liked to do their business during the summer window, which is the primary window in most of the world, a lot more players available and so forth. So probably unreasonable to expect them to fill every spot over the summer. But I do think that if there's as much turnover as I think we're all expecting, they've probably got to replace at least one of those guys. Nico Ladero seems the most obvious.
Yes.
Or at least the most obvious to leave right away. I think it's unlikely also that Albert Rusnak will be back, at least taking up a DP spot for sure. But, they're probably going to have at least 2 spots to play with. So I think filling one of those is important. And I think that even though there are likely to be more players available in the summer window, it's not like you can't go out and get somebody in this window, especially if it's somebody you're going to pay a transfer fee for, right? I think that, if you're looking for a free agent signing or something like that, which is a pretty common way of acquiring players in MLS, that's when you really want to wait for that window, because that's when all the guys are available for free. But if you're willing to pay a big transfer fee, and I think especially the kind of player the Sounders are likely to be targeting, it's either going to be a big enough transfer fee that teams are going to be willing to let them move in the winter, or it's going to be players who are maybe not critical to their team in the current moment, like a guy maybe that's in their early to mid 20s who is a contributor but not a centerpiece of a good team. Those are players that teams are maybe willing to let move a little easier. So I think somebody who's going to be a creative force, I think you said a 10.
Yeah.
I don't think it necessarily has to be a 10 in the traditional sense, but I do think a creative player, whether
central-ish player,
a central-ish creative player that's going to sort of be the player that the Sounders want to build around going forward. That seems the most likely target, and also I think the most important one, because if you get the right player in that position, you don't really have to finish the rebuild. No, as the Sounders have shown us in the past, you can compete right away if you get the right guy and have solid players around them, and then build going forward. As upcoming windows allow you to do so. And it's going to be interesting because the Sounders, I don't think, have ever been in a situation where they're going to have as much turnover at the top as they're likely to have.
Yeah.
At least since the early 2010s.
Yeah, I would say in the last, I would say the Garth Lagaway era and forward, I don't think they've ever had this much flexibility at the top end of the roster. Now they've had years where they turned over probably more players than they've turned over this year, but most of those players were, not designated players. Like there's a scenario that I think the Sounders could potentially open up all 3 DP spots this winter. And here I feel like it might be worth level setting a little bit just so people understand what we're talking about. So the Sounders have 3 designated players right now. Those 3 designated players are Lodeiro, Rusnak, and Ruidíaz. Lodeiro is going to be a free agent. Rusnak is going into an option year, and Ruidíaz has 1 more year left on his guaranteed contract. I think Lodeiro almost certainly gone. The way I think about that is, if you were going to bring him back, I suppose you could talk yourself into bringing him back at like a Max Tam sort of level. And I don't honestly think it's even worth talking to him. Like if you're offering him less than that, you're sort of like you're insulting him a little bit, I think. But even if you bring him back at Max Tam, you're sort of saying like, we don't expect you to be our centerpiece starter anymore. I just don't know that Lodeiro's game translates as a role player or as a as a guy who comes in late or whatever. Like he to me, it's like he's sort of an all or nothing type of player, at least from what I've seen. And maybe I guess you could argue, well, you can move him back but the Sounders don't need that. That's not what the Sounders need. Rusnak, similar situation. I'm sure his option is for a DP level. I think the Sounders have to go in and tell him, like, look, we're willing to bring you back at Max Tam. We can't bring you back as a DP. Whatever we told you 2 years ago, we apologize. It didn't work out the way we hoped it would. We just, like, if you were our number 10, if you were our starting number 10, maybe we can justify bringing you back as DP. I think we've seen enough of Rusnak that being the centerpiece of the offense is probably not the way forward. And then Ruidíaz is a little bit trickier of a situation. He has 1 year left on his contract. I don't think the Sounders are inclined to buy him out, but if like a Saudi team or anyone, frankly, comes in and says, look, we'll take this contract off your hands. Maybe we'll give you maybe you can get a transfer fee for him, but they're not going to get enough of a transfer fee for it to transfer into GAM anyway. So you're just talking about literally the cash.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Sounders are going to really like $1 million or $2 million there. I just don't think that's going to be if he's going to leave, they want to just get out from under his contract.
Right.
I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I think it could happen. I think a lot of that depends on what goes on during the last 10 games of the season. But yeah, like I think you almost have to bring in one DP. If you're going to move 2 DPs out, you can't you got to bring in at least one.
Right. Unless you've got something major cooking for the next window. Like
I suppose.
If you want to do something like Inter Miami has done, right? Like, okay, maybe it's worth it, but
right. Like if you know you could get Kylian Mbappe.
right. Yeah. Probably worth leaving that open for a couple months. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you sort of have to you bring in one in the winter, and then you get the other one in the summer, and maybe that works out okay. And I think it makes more sense to go after presumably you want to get a number 9, because I think Jordan Morris can play that role just fine. I also think that number 9 makes more sense to bring in like a young DP, which brings us into the next phase of this. If the Sounders only have 2 senior DPs, whether the third DP is like an accounting mechanism DP or is a young DP, they can sign 2 more U22 players. And I don't necessarily think those U22 players have to be starters, but that's really where you start to build the next phase of the Sounders. And so this is potentially, we're talking about potentially 4 players you're going to have to pay transfer fees for. And man, I would hope that's in the budget, because the Sounders have not spent literally any money on first team transfer fees in 4 transfer windows. The last time they spent money on a transfer fee was when they brought in Leo Chu in the summer of 2021. And even that wasn't like a crazy amount of money. I think it was $2.5-3 million or something like that. So like, they got to have some money, you would think, to spend on transfer fees. And this is the window. This is the time to do it.
It absolutely is. I mean, and I think too that it's a different time than it was in the past, where you did kind of, I think it was more important to wait until that primary transfer window to bring in players, because players weren't as willing to move to the league. I think now MLS is definitely a little more well-established as a league where younger players from South America, especially, can make a name for themselves and can, hope to move on to bigger leagues. That wasn't as much the case a few years ago. So that gives you a little more flexibility. But I definitely think that we're entering an era in this league where it's pretty clear that you have to spend at least a little bit to be able to keep up. And the Sounders have always been willing to do that. But for a long time, they were one of the only teams willing to do that, right? Right. Now you've got like RSL has spent like almost $20 million in transfer fees over the past couple of windows. I mean, it's everybody is spending. And so the Sounders have got to, you have to do it themselves. And it'll be interesting to see how they want to spend the money, what positions they want to spend the money on, what kind of transfer fees they're capable of paying. There's a lot of people who think that the Sounders are a poverty franchise at this point, and I don't necessarily think that that's anything close to true. But are they a team that can pay a $15 million transfer fee if that's what it takes to get the right player?
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see. We'll have to see.
I mean, I will say that I think we're going to find out a lot about if the Sounders, it's been pretty easy, I think, for the Sounders to create a environment where it was reasonable not to spend money. And that was, that it is what it is, right? They they weren't spending much money, and it was because they had so much stability on the roster, and there wasn't obvious places to spend that money. Like, I'm not mad that they didn't go out and spend a bunch of money on a transfer this recently closed window, because where were you going to put that player? Like, let's assume they had a few $100,000 of cap space. Like, there's just not a way to fit a transfer fee player on there unless you're going to go buy someone out. And even then, like, for what purpose? Like,
Right.
you're going to buy out, like, you're really going to buy out Raul Ruiz just to bring in I guess you could do that, but I would hope that they have more of a plan
Right.
than what that would have required. So I don't know. They've been able to get out of paying transfer fees for, like I said, for 4 transfer windows. And now we find out if that was for a purpose or not, or if they were just being cheap.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have my suspicions. I think that, like you said, there was a lot of stability on the roster. When you only have 3 or 4 spots that you can even conceivably pay a transfer fee for, and they're all filled,
Or like a big, yeah.
There's really only so much you can do.
Right.
And I think a lot of the anger about the Sounders not doing anything, not spending money, is just a manifestation of frustration rather than super well considered thought.
Right.
The team sucks right now. They're bad. The results are bad. It's bad to watch. It's frustrating to see players that have been so great in the past be the opposite of that. Game in and game out. It sucks. It's a huge bummer. But that doesn't change the reality of the Sounders situation. I mean, it's a huge bummer when, I want to buy a new guitar and I don't have the money in my bank account to do it. That doesn't mean I get to get mad that I don't have a new guitar. Like, it's somebody's fault. It's just
right. You can't blame you can get mad, but you don't really get to blame anyone but yourself.
Yeah.
And so on top of all that change, some of the other things I outlined in the story is some other potential changes on the roster. I at this point, I'm going to be pretty surprised if Hebert is back. I think he's shown some positive play at various times this year, but my God, he hasn't scored in 20 games. Literally, like a lot of those games are off the bench, but
he's really the definition of a luxury player at this point, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he goes on a little bit of a run at the end and it doesn't look so bad, but he's on something like $1 million. Hard to imagine him coming back next year. Similar with Arriaga. Like, I suppose it's the Sounders have an option on both Hebert and Arriaga. I suppose it's possible that they pick up Arriaga's option. But I would think the only reason they would do that is because they think they can trade him. And if they think they can trade him, okay, fair enough. Pick up his option. See if you can get anything for him that's more than you'd get if you didn't pick up his option, right?
I think you got to be real damn sure you can trade him, though.
Right, you got to be really damn sure. And then so that's almost $2 million of cap space right there. And then you have my suspicion is one of you can't bring back both Steph Fry and Steph Cleveland. I strongly suspect that they're going to go with Fry just because Fry is a much more established player. Cleveland just honestly hasn't done enough this year to prove that he's worthy of the starting spot. I don't think he's been as bad as his stats would suggest. He's given up at least 2 goals in each of his last 6 starts, which is a pretty bad run of goals. If you look at each of the goals, I think you can say, like, he's given up a ton of just absolute worldies. So it's like, I don't want to beat the guy up too much.
Sure.
But at some point,
I think that when you have 2 keepers that are playing in front of largely identical defenses and the numbers are so dramatically different, either maybe Stephen Fry isn't as cooked as everybody wants to think he is, or maybe Stephen Cleveland isn't as clear-cut of an upgrade. I don't know. I think that I do think he's been somewhat unlucky, but I think the numbers definitely bear out that there's a gap there.
Yeah, he's given up something like 23 goals in 6 games or something like that. 20 goals in 6 games.
Yeah,
I think he's given up 1 more goal or 1 fewer goal than Fry has in like 19 games. So I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it's pretty stark. And my suspicion, and he's on, he's not on nothing. He's on a $200,000 contract. Fry is on $650, which makes him the 6th highest paid goalkeeper in the league. I don't think Fry is going to, like, I would think the Sounders are going to, basically tell Fry, like, look, if you're willing to take a pay cut, we're willing to bring you back, but we can't bring you back at $650.
Yeah.
And assuming he's willing to take less, let's assume like something like 500. I think Cleveland goes, and then you just roll the dice. Andrew Thomas, Jacob Castro are both perfectly, like, I think, high upside goalkeepers. Either one of them could be the backup next year. I've been pretty impressed with Castro when I've seen him. I'm very impressed with Andrew Thomas. Honestly, I would be okay with either one of them usurping Cleveland right now at this point. And so that's, you put all that together. Again, that's about $2 million of salary cap space. And then you have guys like Freddie Montero, Kellen Rowe, who, I'm not mad at. I think they've been exceeded my expectations of both of them pretty thoroughly. But I don't. Maybe you can bring back Rowe under the right circumstances. But to me, Freddie is, he's not playing a ton anyway.
Right.
Let him retire as a Sounder. I'm sure we'll see him around. He'll probably be involved in the organization in some way. And then you get farther down the roster, you have some more players who, may or may not be back, like the younger guys. But you add it all up, like I said, it's over half their salary cap commitment. And
there's really no limit to how different this team can look. And what I think is really going to be interesting is there's a safe approach where they do bring back a decent number of guys that they could maybe pass on. They bring back Rusnak as a TAM player. Maybe they don't buy out Raul or sell Raul. He comes back and is sort of expected to be a starter. They bring in a DP that's maybe a little bit more of a sure thing, slightly lower upside, higher floor, lower ceiling, and try to get right back to competing. Or there's the option where they just kind of blow everything up, where
they absolutely could do that.
And that's what a lot of people seem to want them to do.
Yeah.
But if they do that, the odds of them competing right away are, I think, very low. And I think
and it doesn't really feel like something that they are inclined to just totally do. And frankly, I don't think they should. I mean, like, João Paulo is another player who's on an option. I have to assume they're going to pick that up, bring him back. But when they have good pieces to build around: Jordan Morris, Christian Roldan, João Paulo, Yeimar. I'll still put Jackson Reagan in that category. Nuhu, Alex Roldan. These are all very capable players. These were all players who, at the beginning of the year, I would have said are among the best at their positions, all of them. And I think that's still, vaguely true. And like, that's a strong like that's a strong core of a roster. There's no reason you have to totally blow things up. You just got to build put some quality pieces around them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing about the way this team is playing right now, is that it's pretty miserable to watch. The results aren't very good, but it's not like they are, cold boogers on a paper plate. Like, they have talented players. They are creating chances. They don't. It's not like everyone on the team is aging out. Like, Jordan Morris is.
No, they've got a lot of guys that are in the primes of their career.
Yeah, Christian, Jordan both have a year or two at least left in the very peak of their athletic prime.
Oh,
Nuhu's a young guy. Yemar's a relative. Like, there's no reason this.
Yes.
Like, there's no reason this team can't compete right away. But I think there is this perception that the whole thing is rotten top to bottom, and they've got to clear everything out. And I think that they really are one or two big acquisitions away, if they're the right acquisitions, if they fit with this core, and if they're willing to make some difficult decisions elsewhere,
right,
from being right there at the top again.
Yeah. It's. I will say, I expect this to be the most interesting offseason probably in Sounders history. And if it's not, that's bad. But I think they have huge incentives. Like, this is the thing, is that next year is a hugely, hugely important year, in part because they're going to be doing this 50th anniversary thing. They're going to be unveiling a new brand identity, or a brand refresh, I think is what they're calling it. They are moving into long anchors. There's just a lot of energy around this team. And if they got to know that I'm sure they know that the product on the field has to live up to that. Like, no one's going to go to Lumen Field because they got a new training center at Long Acres. Like, that's just not how it works. That the Long Acres thing creates some momentum and it creates some energy, but it's only as useful as people wanting to go out to the stadium. Same thing with the brand refresh. No one goes and shows up to a game just because there's a new logo or slightly new colors or new jerseys or whatever. Like, that's not why people show up to the games. Maybe you'll sell some more merch. That's great. I support selling merch, but they got to have, like, if this is ultimately, it's about getting people into the stadium, building energy and hype around the team. And in order to do that, the Sounders know as well as anyone that, especially when your brand is so explicitly tied to winning, they have to.
And I think especially when, right, wrong, or indifferent, the attitudes about the team and where they're at are not good right now.
Right.
People,
and they know that.
Yeah. People's dollars do not go as far as they used to say the least. There's more competition for people's entertainment dollars these days. And, I mean, attendance is obviously not what it used to be. I don't think the Sounders are in any danger of becoming irrelevant by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think if you want to, we're not at a place where people are going to be patient with a multi-season rebuild, right? Like,
right.
And I think that seems to be what some people say they want, but I'm just really skeptical of that.
And I guess I should also add the caveat to all of this, because it does feel a little bit like we're completely writing this year off. I'm not writing this year off at all. What I'm saying is that regardless of how this season goes, there has to be some change, because it's just the end of the cycle. And it's like, they could go on and win MLS Cup, and I'll tell you the exact same thing. I don't know that there's any of the players who I listed who my feelings about whether or not they should come back or not are going to be changed just because they went on a 10-game or 15-game run and they win MLS Cup, because it's not about them being bad players. It's about they're just reaching the end of their cycles. And that's, and so again, like, I do think that this team is capable of turning this season around. They are in a playoff spot right now. They're in a strong playoff spot. If they just play the last 10 games at the pace that they played the first 24, they're going to make the playoffs, and they're going to be they'll have home field advantage, and they'll probably advance at least to a couple rounds. And once you do that, who knows what happens, right? But this discussion, I think, is somewhat separate from how this season goes. And I think in some ways it's good to have the discussion now when we're a little bit more clear-eyed about it, and we're not wrapped up in the emotions of, oh my God, how can you let go of Nico Lodeiro? He just won MLS Cup MVP. And it's like, because we
saw the first half of the season.
Right, exactly.
Players don't get better as they age, generally.
I mean, certainly not once they're like 35.
Yeah. And I think that there's always this hope that we can just bring them back into a reduced role, and they'll accept that, and it'll all work out. And it frequently doesn't. I think that's what the Timbers tried to do with Diego Valeri.
It is, absolutely.
And it didn't work. And it was a really bad ending. I think if the Sounders can make a clean break this offseason, that's just much better for everyone involved.
Yeah. I will say that I'm somewhat hopeful that they'll make some signings before the roster freeze, but I don't think those signings are going to be like free agents that are going to compete for starting spots. But like, I'll just throw this out there. A guy named Bradilio Rodriguez, who is I think he's Portuguese, who plays for Tacoma Defiance, had a hat trick today. I would highly urge you to go check out the hat trick. He had 2 of the 3 goals he had were absolutely spectacular goals. He's an interesting player who I think could potentially be useful off the bench for the Sounders. Paul Rothrock is another guy who I think could potentially be useful off the bench for the Sounders. And I don't know if either one of them are like game changers, but it would be nice to have some more options off the bench. And I think both those guys are possible to do it.
I also think figuring out what you have in guys like that
exactly
in a season like this is a good call.
Right, exactly. Because if what you don't want to do is be faced with a decision on, those guys and maybe a few others where you're like considering giving them first team contracts for 2024 and you haven't really tested them in a way that you need to test them. So hopefully the end of the season is useful in that way. And I think that's about what I had to say about that, I think.
Yeah, I think that we're largely on the same page here, where it is very exciting, but I don't think that the roster is that bad. I think that there are really important spots that good MLS teams have to get a lot of production out of, that the Sounders are not getting that production out of. And I think that if they can fill those spots with better players that will produce, this is still a really good team. The core is still strong. They've still got good players with a lot of years left. They've got a lot of very young players under club control for a long time. The depth is good. They just don't have those stars at the very top end pulling their weight. And if they can get that, I think they're set up pretty well.
Yeah, there's been a notion kind of going around. I think that the Sounders' depth got exposed as not being very good this year, and I don't know. I'm not totally sure that's what happened. I think what happened is the top end of the roster was decimated either through poor performance or injury or whatever else. And if you're not getting production out of the top, 5 spots on your roster, which the Sounders haven't been getting over the last 4 months, it doesn't matter how deep you are. Like, you don't have players on no MLS team has players on their roster that can consistently backfill underperformance or lack of performance at the highest end of your roster. And that's just sort of how it goes. But anyway, all right. Well, we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about this transition to being a reader-supported model. And if you're into listening about that, I highly encourage you to stick around. And if you're not, hey, you're forewarned.
Yep.
All right. You're listening to Nos Audietes, and we'll be right back. Watson's Counter wants to thank everyone for their patience, but now the wait is over. Located at 6420 24th Avenue Northwest in Ballard, they've reopened in a brand new location with the same bomb-ass coffee and the same dumbass vibes. You can still expect their classics like the gochujang fried chicken sandwich and Fruity Pebbles French toast, alongside their new soft serve program and their world-class coffee. Make sure to follow them on Instagram for all the latest and greatest. Welcome back to Nos Audietes. So we wanted to spend this last segment talking mainly about this big transition that we are part of. Again, basically what's happening is Nos Audietes is formally joining up with Sounder at Heart and Ride of the Valkyries. Together, we're all basically going all in on a website together. I am, as you probably know, I have been the editor at Sounder at Heart for a while, so I'm kind of speaking about Sounder at Heart as if it's a third party when it's really not that much of one. But yeah, this is pretty exciting. I'm leaving my job at Vox Media, and Vox Media is basically allowing Sounder at Heart to leave and be its own thing. And so I should say thank you to Vox for allowing us to do that. They didn't have to. And I'm excited about this, but it's also super, super nerve wracking because basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the stability of a job that, I had benefits, and I was a full-time employee at Vox, and I'd been a full-time employee for almost 10 years. And now I'm starting my own business, basically, with the help of Aaron and Lickett and a lot of other people. But I'm really the one who is the only one who's quitting their job to do this.
Yeah.
and I don't say that to get your sympathy, but I do want to like be clear about the stakes that we're going through here. Is that we are gambling that enough people want to support and find Sounder at Heart and Nos Arietes and Run of the Valkyries valuable, that they will help, they will support the site. That doesn't mean that we need 10,000 subscribers tomorrow, but
be nice though if you want to do that.
Yeah, if you or you have a bunch of money you want to throw at us and be a sponsor.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we are looking for sponsors, and if you want to do that, get in touch. But I think a big part of this is that we just really feel, I think all of us felt, that this model is the most promising. The ad supported model just doesn't seem to be working very well for anyone right now. And this is a way of sort of getting out of that and not being so reliant on algorithms. And we're not doing this to get rich. We're not doing it to make ourselves attractive to investors. We're not taking on investors, frankly. We're doing this because we want it to be a sustainable project. We're passionate about it. We think Sounders fans, Reign fans deserve serious, impactful, in-person reporting, and hopefully people want to support that.
Yeah, and I think that the writing is on the wall for media, digital media, in a lot of ways, and we've seen all media. Yeah, I mean, all media is digital media at this point, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's a point.
And there's a very real future where all media is either content farmed, AI generated, clickbait. A lot of people are wondering about the best Nike shoes 2023. Well,
right.
When it comes to Nike shoes, like that kind of stuff, or just sensationalist garbage or whatever that is funded by like Dark Bunny, or maybe you can be like the pet project of a billionaire,
right?
Until they get bored of you, or you can find a niche that is underserved and lean on your community to support it, and because they care about it, it's important to them. And I do think that a lot of people are starting to kind of see that's the way things have gone, the way that's where we're at, the way that digital media on the internet has worked for a long time. People got accustomed to stuff being free. They've gotten accustomed to the ad supported model, and it's just not, the money's just not there anymore. And a lot of that, the money was never there. It was investors throwing money at these projects. Like Vox is a great example of that, where there was a lot of startup money and a lot of investor money, and the core business had some issues, right? And that's not to pick on Vox, right? Like that's just kind of a lot of that was a billionaire who will maybe go unnamed just lying to everyone and telling them, well, now video is the way we got to do things, and all the, it's a whole mess, right? But the reality on the ground is that if you care about this stuff that is not profitable for huge media conglomerates to care about, you have to support it. You have to support it and vote with your dollars. And that's not to say that you owe anyone anything. You don't owe me anything. You don't owe Jeremiah anything. Like,
yeah, we
will do our best to make sure that you're getting your money's worth, but you do kind of have to buy into the new paradigm. And I think people, like I said, maybe I'm naive, but I really think people are ready for that. I think that we've kind of reached a point in the media landscape where the stuff that has always been there before has largely gotten so bad and people feel so underserved by it that they are kind of seeing the writing on the wall, and they're willing to start supporting things that, maybe a few years ago, it wouldn't have been as much of an incentive to do so.
Right. And so a little bit more about what we're offering folks. And I'm not going to get into breaking down everything that comes with the various membership tiers, but the membership tiers we're offering, the basic one, $19 a year. It's going to get you all our written and podcast content. I'll be honest with you, that's not a tier designed to really support what we're doing. It's a way of getting you in the door. It's a way of you allowing readers to support what we're doing in spirit, essentially. But if everyone subscribes at the $19 a year level, we would need a lot of subscribers to make this work.
We're not Defector.
Right. We're exactly. The next level is at $74 a year. That's really where I think we can make this work. And so far, most of the signups we have are at that $74 a year. Granted, we are offering a discount for early adopters at $50 a year. And hopefully those people will eventually become $74 a year subscribers. But with that, you're going to get there's some discount codes for our merchandise, and you'll get access to a Discord server that we've already spun up, and we're hopeful will be a value add to people. And then on top of that, there's a $206 subscriber level. We've gotten a fair amount of interest in that. There's a few more perks that come along with that because we're hoping to do some more live events. The perks circulate mainly around the live events. And then there's this other tier that we created at $500 a year. If you just wanted to give us money, frankly.
Yeah.
There's not, I'll be honest with you, there's not a lot of value add to it other than you just love what we do. We have actually had a couple people sign up for that. Very thankful for. In fact, I'll just go ahead and shout them out because it is one of the things we said we would do. And one of them is why am I blanking on the name of his bar? Oh my God. I'm gonna have to edit this out or something. Glenn White, though, is one of them.
He doesn't have a bar, as far as I know.
Glenn White does not have a bar, and I feel like we're probably gonna have to edit this because I should have been more.
It's the doctor's office.
It's the doctor's office. Thank you, Jesus. Wow, that was horrible. I was panicking there. But anyway, doctor's office, great bar. I would absolutely recommend you going out there and checking it out. It's in Capitol Hill. I've had quite a few drinks there, and it's a good time. Anyway, getting lost in this. But yeah, this is what we're doing. This is kind of maybe we'll make a pledge drive episode, an annual or quarterly thing where we just basically beg you to give us money.
Yeah.
But I guess the big thing we wanted to also bring up is if this is something that you think is valuable, that if you want in your life, this is the time to step up and show that. We have some runway. We're not going to go away tomorrow, but we won't be here forever if people don't support it. And if people don't support it, that's fine. No harm, no foul. We'll move on with our lives. But this is the model that we're hoping to make work. If you think Sounder at Heart, Nos Arietes, Ride of the Valkyries are important parts of your media consumption, consider supporting us. And we hope we demonstrate value to you to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything else to really add there?
Yeah. I mean, I think too, we are going to do our best to give you the bang for your buck, both in terms of what what Jeremiah provides to everyone, what we do on this podcast, all the free stuff, right, that everyone gets. But if there's stuff that we can do to make the subscriber tiers more valuable, like if there's kinds of exclusive content that you're looking for, we're going to throw, I think it's fair to say, we're probably going to throw some stuff at the wall, see what sticks, see what people like. But if you have ideas,
sure.
If we hate them, we won't do it. That's the worst thing. That's the worst that can happen, right? But let us know what kind of stuff you want to see. I think that would be super helpful. That's about all I have, though. I'm excited about this because I know that this is something that I believe in, just in terms of I believe in the work you do and the work the Ride of the Valkyries folks do. There's a lot of talented people that make Sounder at Heart and Ride of the Valkyries great and such trusted resources. But I also believe in this model, and I think it's going to be really, really important, not just for soccer, right? Like for everything. This is a really important turning point, I think, in digital media. There's a lot of opportunity there as the bottom kind of falls out. And it can go a really bad way, or it can go maybe kind of a positive way. And we see a return to sort of more grassroots journalism that people are willing to support. People have local news again. People get in-depth coverage on things that are actually really important to them rather than stuff that does good ratings. And so, I really hope that we can make this work, because that makes me feel better about the future. Just generally, because I'm tired of feeling pessimistic about the future. So
yeah. And I will say I also don't want to make it sound like I am the only person that's getting paid in this whole endeavor. In fact, my intention is I don't really plan on taking a ton of pay. I'm not expecting to replace my income in the first 3 to 6 months. But what we're really doing is we're building up a budget to pay our contributors. I will, don't get me wrong, my intention is to ultimately pay myself. But I have a little bit of runway, and really what we're doing here is trying to create, like I said, a sustainable base that we can build off of, that we can grow into. And so you can rest assured that the writing that's going on Sound at Heart, all the work that's going in, people are being compensated. I don't know if we can say they're being compensated fairly, because what is fair, right? But right. They are being compensated. Hopefully they're being compensated in a way that will be an improvement over what it was before. And yeah, so you are by becoming a subscriber, you are absolutely in a very real way supporting independent journalism, local journalism. And I guess that's my pitch for now. And I'm sure I'll come up with a more refined pitch over the course of the next few months. But I'm excited about this. I think people are going to like the new site. We've been working on getting it functional right now. It's in beta. And a lot of people are using it. People seem to like it so far. And yeah, I guess that's what I got.
Yeah. But I don't have much else. No, I think I think you covered it.
Yeah, and I guess it's a good time to thank the sponsors we do have already. Full Pull Wines, Watson's Counter. I'll note, I went to Watson's Counter recently, and I had probably the best iced oat milk latte I've had in a long time, and it was just about perfect. And they have wonderful coffee there. They have wonderful food. Full Pull Wines has been such a huge supporter of ours. I can say for sure we would not still be podcasting if not for their support. So it's stuff like that keeps us going. And hopefully we find some more folks that want to help us on this journey. Aaron, I do want to say you've been hugely supportive during this entire process. I appreciate it. Lickit has done yeoman's work on the background, making all this stuff. I tend to come up with ideas and then try to help people, try to find people that will help me execute them. Lickit is like an expert at taking my dumb ideas and making them make sense. So I can't say thank you enough. I should probably shout out Dave Clark, who really set this journey on its path way back in 2008 when he started Sound at Heart, the first iteration of Sound at Heart, and kind of we've taken it from there. And he's been a very influential part of what we've been doing ever since then. Steve Vogt, Jacob Cristobal, Susie Rance over at Red of the Valkyries have also been really helpful. So with that, I should probably sign off. I am Jeremiah Oshan. This is Nos Audietis. And remember, you'll never get alone.
We love you. Let's win another one.